Y formen un mariachi. Un mariachi, como antes dije, señoras y señores, va entre los 12 años y los 17.
Somos changuitos, changuitos feos, les obsequiamos.
And in these days of emotional tension,
it was 1964. The civil rights movement had erupted. Thousands of miles away, young boys were being slaughtered in the Vietnam War. The British invasion was spreading throughout the world. It was during these seminal times that a group of young boys, some as young as 9 and 11, were brought together to form what would become the birth of the youth mariachi movement that endures and thrives across the United States over 50 years later. Father Charles Rourke, a charismatic jazz pianist out of Schenectady, New York, fell in love with mariachi music when he was assigned to All Saints Parish Catholic Church in Tucson, Arizona.
Gilbert, may the peace of Christ be with you always.
And with your spirit.
Father Rourke hit on the idea of forming a youth mariachi out of young men from the mostly Mexican-American community in Tucson. They named the youth mariachi Los Changuitos Feos de Tucson.
We didn't like the name Los Changuitos Feos, at least a few of us didn't. A few of us fought it, we didn't like it, we didn't want it, but they said, you got it, here it is, like it. So we just learned to live with it.
Father Rourke molded the young men into a disciplined, cohesive group. He rehearsed them diligently, based on his experience as a jazz pianist and his experience having shared the stage in New York with jazz artists like Sarah Vaughan, Duke Ellington, and his association with his friend, jazz icon Peter Nero. The city of Tucson became the launchpad that would propel Los Changuitos Feos to perform in major cities across the United States and Mexico. New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Guadalajara, Jalisco, and Mexico City. Los Changuitos Feos performed for U.S. President Richard Nixon's inaugural parade. They performed for President Lyndon Johnson, Mayor Richard Daley of Chicago, and music icons Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss. Los Changuitos Feos performed at a variety of events and venues like Disneyland in Anaheim, California, and Universal Studios in Universal City, California. Los Changuitos Feos also appeared in a CBS television special.
Look up and live. Today, the Mission and the Mariachi with Los Changuitos Feos and their director, Father Charles Rourke.
The foundation was set, and the success of Los Changuitos Feos was built on that foundation. Tucson, Arizona embraced and promoted them as ambassadors of goodwill for the city. And in 1970, Mayor Lou Davis declared June 13th Los Changuitos Feos Day. The rise in popularity of Los Changuitos Feos was meteoric, and the qualities they learned, discipline, stage presence, perseverance, cultural and civic pride, were instilled in them, and they continue to apply them for the rest of their lives. Their music inspired the emergence of mariachi competition events from Tucson to across the United States that continue to today over 50 years later. But along with the monumental success that touched the lives of the young people of Los Changuitos Feos, for many of those original members came a terrible price to pay. For behind the purity of the clerical collar lurked a predatory and deeply flawed individual.
I was able to push him off of me, and I got to the rectory there at the church, and I says, that's horrible what you're doing. I says, this is not right. And he just said, well, I'm just a lonely man and all kinds of things. And I said, you're a sick person. I says, how can you? But I had no idea that he was doing this to others. I had no idea.
he had pulled over by the oleanders by the railroad tracks by my mom's house. And I was in the car when he reached over. And then when I felt a tug, I jumped out of the car and I ran home.
Despite the physical and emotional journey of their experiences, the members of the group persevered and were determined to excel in their music. They were committed to their music and to each other. Their efforts have been rewarded with an exalted position in youth mariachi music history.
Thank you very much. In 1964, in my hometown of Tucson, Arizona, Father Charles Rourke took a bunch of kids between the ages of 11 and 16. 11, was it? 9, between the ages of 9 and 16, and he formed a mariachi band called the Los Changuitos Feos.
The emergence of mariachi music that is woven into the fabric of American contemporary music began and endures to this day, over 50 years later, in the numerous mariachi music festivals across the United States.
I have always felt very strongly that the Mexican American can use additional motivation. There is a certain sense of fatalism that we see in many of them. And I'm hopeful that this project will show at least these boys, and perhaps others like them, that there are bigger and better things in life, things which are attainable through the areas and roots of self-discipline and hard work.
This is the dark and the light and ultimately triumphant story of Los Changuitos Feos de Tucson.